the wound most men won't admit. There is a particular kind of man who has done everything right and still ended up alone. He texted back quickly. He was honest about his feelings. He showed up when he said he would. He tried harder when things went cold. He was, in every measurable, socially approved sense, a good man. And none of it worked. Not even close. If that sounds familiar, this is not a coincidence. This is a pattern. And patterns, unlike bad luck, can be understood. Most men walk through life with a fundamental misunderstanding baked into how they were raised. They were taught that romantic success is the reward for emotional generosity, that if you give enough, care enough, show enough, the world will respond in kind. What nobody told them is that attraction does not operate on the same logic as gratitude. A woman does not feel drawn to a man because he was consistently available. She feels drawn to a man because, on some level, she cannot quite locate the edges of him, because he carries something she cannot fully hold in her hands. That thing has a name, and it is not charm. It is not looks. It is not money, though men spend their lives chasing all three as proxies for it. The thing is presence, a quiet, unshakable sense that this man exists entirely on his own terms, and that your attention, while welcome, does not complete him. Why most men fail, the real architecture of the problem. Here is the brutal truth that the self-improvement industry carefully avoids. Most men are not failing because of what they lack. They are failing because of what they give away too soon. Their attention, their approval, their emotional vulnerability, their future. All of it laid on the table before the game has even started, as if abundance of offering compensates for absence of mystery. Think about the men you know who seem to attract people effortlessly. Not the loudest ones, not the most aggressive, but the ones with a certain stillness about them. The ones who don't laugh at every joke, who don't fill every silence, who ask a question and then actually wait unhurried for the answer. These men are not doing anything theatrical. They are simply not leaking. Needy behavior is not just unattractive, it is revealing. When a man chases reassurance, over-explains himself, or becomes anxious the moment a woman pulls back slightly, he communicates something far deeper than insecurity. He communicates that he has outsourced his sense of self to her reaction, that she, in essence, holds the remote control. And the moment she realizes that, even unconsciously, the dynamic shifts. Not in his favor, Nietzsche wrote that the desire for approval is a form of self-measure. He wasn't talking about dating. He was talking about the fundamental architecture of will. But the principle translates without friction. A man who needs constant validation is not a man who has found himself. He is a man who is asking others to find him for him. And that vacancy, that hollow center, is felt. Not analyzed, not diagnosed. Felt. Like walking into a room and sensing that something important is missing, even before you know what it is. The psychology of attraction. What she actually responds to. Attraction, at its core, is not a decision, it is a response. Nobody chooses to feel it the way they choose a sandwich. It rises or it doesn't, and it is governed by a set of psychological triggers that are far older than modern dating culture, far older than romantic love as a concept, far older than the language we use to talk about any of this. One of those triggers is unpredictability. Not chaos, not instability, but the particular electricity that comes from being unable to fully map someone. The human brain is a prediction machine. It builds models of people and then runs simulations. When the model is complete, when it knows exactly what you will say, how you will react, what you want and how desperately you want it, the simulation becomes routine. Routine does not generate excitement. It generates comfort at best and boredom at worst. Contrast that with a man who does not immediately respond to every text, who sometimes declines plans with no elaborate explanation, who seems genuinely content in his own company, who notices things and doesn't always say what he notices, who smiles slightly at the edge of some private understanding. That man is not a complete model. That man is a question the mind keeps returning to, and questions, especially unanswered ones, have a gravity that certainty never achieves. Emotional tension, real tension, not manufactured drama, is the medium through which attraction moves. Not conflict, not cruelty, tension. The kind created by proximity without full surrender, by interest that doesn't collapse into need, by warmth that is clearly earned, not freely distributed. There is a reason a man who is slightly difficult to reach feels more significant than one who is always immediately, eagerly available. Scarcity is not just an economic principle, it is a psychological one. The philosophical layer, power, perception, and human nature. Machiavelli understood something about power that most modern people find uncomfortable. That perception governs reality in all human affairs, sometimes more completely than reality itself. He was not prescribing cynicism, he was describing mechanics. The man who is seen as powerful commands a different response than the man who merely is powerful in some private, undemonstrated way. Image, carefully maintained, never over-explained, functions as its own form of force. Translate this into social dynamics, and the implication is sharp. A man who constantly explains his value is a man who suspects on some level that it isn't obvious. A man who does not explain it, who simply moves through the world with the quiet assumption that his worth is self-evident, communicates something different entirely. Not arrogance. Arrogance is loud, defensive, compensatory. What this communicates is closer to settled certainty, the kind of certainty you cannot fake, because every attempt at faking it exposes itself through the very effort it requires. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power was not about domination over others, it was about mastery over the self, the relentless internal project of becoming someone who does not flinch, does not shrink, does not wait for the world's permission to exist fully. That kind of man is not performing strength, he has simply stopped performing weakness. And in a world where most people are performing weakness constantly, apologizing before they've done anything wrong, minimizing themselves preemptively, seeking approval like oxygen, the contrast is extraordinary. Mystery is not a trick. It is what naturally occurs when a person has an interior life rich enough that it cannot be fully transmitted in casual conversation. When a man reads, thinks, struggles privately, fails and recovers without announcing it, builds things in silence, and reveals them on his own schedule, he becomes genuinely difficult to exhaust. There is always more. And that inexhaustibility is magnetic in a way that no amount of explicit charisma can replicate. Behavioral shifts, how to actually carry yourself. None of this is theoretical if you understand what it requires in practice. It does not require becoming cold. It does not require manufactured aloofness or strategic cruelty. It requires something far more demanding: that you become genuinely occupied with your own life to the degree that your attention becomes a limited resource. Not because you are pretending, but because you actually have something to protect it for. A man with a mission, a real one, not a pose, does not organize his schedule around a woman's availability. Not because he is playing games, but because the mission is real, the time is finite, and the work demands presence. This communicates more than any dating strategy ever devised. It communicates that this man's world does not pause in her absence, that she is entering something already in motion. And entering something already in motion feels very different from being handed the wheel of something that was waiting, idle, for her to arrive. Control your reactions. Not suppress them, control them. There is a difference between a man who feels nothing and a man who feels everything, but chooses deliberately what to express, when, and how much. The latter is not closed, he is composed. And composed men are rare enough that their composure reads as strength, even to people who wouldn't consciously articulate it that way. When something bothers you, you do not spiral. You do not demand explanation. You adjust your position quietly and let your changed behavior communicate what your words don't need to. When something pleases you, you acknowledge it. Briefly, genuinely, without pouring yourself into the expression of it. This regulation is not performance. It is the product of a man who has spent enough time with himself to know that his interior weather does not require a live broadcast. Do not over-explain yourself. This one is worth repeating because it runs counter to every instinct trained by a culture that rewards transparency as a virtue. Transparency has its place, but strategic opacity is not dishonesty. It is the maintenance of a private self. When you decide something, decide it. When you want something, want it without a press conference. When you decline something, decline it without a dissertation. A sentence or two, then silence. Let the silence carry weight. It will. Dominance, mystery, and emotional command. Dominance in this context has nothing to do with volume. The loudest man in the room is almost never the most powerful one. Real dominance is structural. It is the quiet certainty with which you occupy your position, make your choices, and receive the world's response, including rejection, including silence, including the full weight of uncertainty. Without collapsing into reactivity, there is a specific kind of man that women find genuinely unsettling in the best possible way. The one who seems entirely comfortable with her not being impressed. Who does not escalate his presentation when he senses indifference? Who, if anything, seems to find her neutrality mildly interesting rather than threatening. This man is not indifferent to her. He is simply not dependent on her reaction to feel whole. And that specific form of emotional self-sufficiency is experienced as power, whether she names it that way or not. The slightly unpredictable man is not unstable. He is simply not governed by the need to be consistently legible. He shows warmth at unexpected moments and reserves it at expected ones. He is interested today and fully occupied tomorrow, not as manipulation, but as the natural rhythm of a person with a genuine interior. He introduces ideas that don't resolve neatly. He asks questions that require thought. He does not finalize the picture, he keeps it alive, and live things, unlike finished ones, hold attention. Never chase emotional comfort by making yourself smaller. The instinct to soften, to qualify, to dial yourself back when the temperature in a room drops, resist it. What looks like consideration is often just fear wearing good manners. A man who holds his ground calmly, who doesn't rewrite himself under social pressure, who can sit inside an uncomfortable moment without rushing to resolve it for everyone's sake. That man broadcasts security. And security, in a world saturated with anxious performance, is deeply, quietly attractive. A realization, not a lesson. Here is what this all converges to, not as advice, but as recognition of something that was always true. The men who move through the world with ease, who attract without performing, who hold attention without demanding it, they are not doing something you cannot do. They have simply stopped doing something you are still doing, apologizing for existing, explaining themselves into smallness, pursuing approval as though it were oxygen, confusing emotional availability with emotional dependence, and calling it openness. Attraction is not something you manufacture. It is something you stop blocking. It flows naturally toward the man who has become genuinely difficult to fully possess. Not because he is withholding himself from cruelty or strategy, but because he has an interior that is actually large enough to remain partially unknown. Because he has a life that is actually full enough that his attention is actually a gift and not a default setting. The shift is not in what you do. It is in what you stop needing. Stop needing the text back. Stop needing the validation to know you made the right choice. Stop needing the clarity that only comes from someone else's reassurance. Find it in yourself, not as a performance of confidence, but as the actual byproduct of a man who has built something inside himself worth standing behind. That man does not chase. He does not over-explain. He does not compete for attention in the same marketplace where everyone else is screaming. He simply becomes, quietly, completely, without announcement, someone worth being curious about. Someone whose absence is felt more than most people's presence. And you already know, sitting here right now, whether that is the man you are, or the man you have been circling from a distance, waiting for permission to become. There is no permission coming. There never was.